inside a statewide campaign to create 1,000 high-growth startups. We'll talk about that today on Builders Live. Hey, I'm Chris Swink, the co-founder, CEO, and publisher of Technically with some hat hair. I'm going live with my dear friend Tony Zanders, the CEO of Nexus Louisiana, to look at an initiative they have to build 1,000 high-growth startups in their state. We're going to look at how they're doing it, why they're doing it, what other ecosystems around the country can learn from it. Tony, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Always good to be with you.
Even when I have hat hair like I do right now.
Hat hair is better than no hair.
A smooth operator. All right, Tony, start me off. What's the actual proper goal that you set, and why set it at all?
Sure. Yeah, creating 1,000 net new startups that are building technology in Louisiana. It's a goal that I think is sufficiently ambitious. It's I think inspired by the fact that the technology industry in Louisiana, I would describe it as one that is currently filled by companies that are in a variety of other industries that have now incorporated technology. So whether that's oil and gas, petrochemical, healthcare, but I wouldn't describe it as you would Silicon Valley or Austin. These, which are companies that when they were first born, they were created as technology companies, right? And I think that's the biggest opportunity for our state. And the way those types of companies are started, there's a playbook for it, right? You have to invest in founders who have these specific ideas for a new technology to be produced. And when you look at Silicon Valley and you look at the 1970s when it was, birthed, it was centered around a major research institution like Stanford and others. But it was taking place in garages. It was taking place in dorm rooms. It was taking place throughout sort of that geographic region. And it took about a generation, 40, 50 years for it to become something that we now know as Silicon Valley, but it didn't begin that way. And so I think thinking in terms of decades here in Louisiana is important. I think it's very possible and feasible, but not if we measure ourselves with this year over year KPI that a lot of ecosystems do. And so I think the 10-year part of that goal is intentional. But 1,000 is also intentional because I think that's a realistic goal. And it's across the state because our state has 4 million people. We're smaller than the city of Houston alone. And I think we don't have the luxury of New Orleans competing with Baton Rouge or Lafayette competing with Shreveport. That's a luxury that Texas has, where Houston and Dallas and Austin can have these, really large self-sufficient ecosystems unto themselves. We have to think as a state, and we have to think over a 10-year time horizon if we want to create our own tech industry. And it's going to happen through startups. That's our hypothesis.
So lots here. First, I felt like there's some intentional language. You and I have talked about this before. Walk me through entrepreneurship, startup, founder. Why and when are you using those terms for this project and your work more generally?
Sure. We removed the word entrepreneur from our website within a few months of me starting in this role.
Interesting.
And I think the reason was that is such a writ large term that encompasses anyone who is working on their own business. And most of those types of folks here in Louisiana, and I venture to say across the country outside of those major tech industries, these are small businesses, right? And the way that I sort of tell the audience that I'm speaking to of any given audience is, I ask the question, how many of you would be excited and over the moon if you and your business made $1 million this year
Mm.
in revenue. And a certain group of people will raise their hands. But then there's a group of people that won't raise their hands. And I say, okay, how many of you would be grossly disappointed if all you made was $1 million this year?
Mm.
And then another separate group will raise their hands, right? And that's how I sort of explain, there's a difference between an entrepreneur that's small business owner versus a high growth tech startup or high growth startup. And so we don't use the word entrepreneur, we use founder, and we don't talk about small businesses much. We talk about startups. And the other reason is practically speaking, there's other agencies and groups and ecosystems that are mission focused on helping the small business thrive, right? Like the SBA or the SBDC. And they too are taxpayer funded. They too are supported by policymakers. We have to differentiate our value in this broader ecosystem on why should you fund a startup accelerator? Why should you? We already have the SBDC, right? Well, let me explain why. Let me explain the difference, right? And the simple difference is you want to open up a new landscaping company. You can go to the SBDC and get some coaching on getting your first loan. And by sundown, you can have received that first loan and gone over to Home Depot and bought your first lawnmower, and you're off to the races, right?
Right.
Whereas for a tech startup, you're a much riskier bet. No bank will give you a loan, and it's going to require a lot more upfront capital to get off the ground. And it may be years until you start to generate revenue from all the research and development you're doing and the customer development you're doing. And so when we're trying to situate ourselves in a broader statewide ecosystem, we say, if you want to, open up that landscaping business, we can point you to our colleagues over at the SBDC. But if you want to reinvent the lawnmower and create a solar powered lawnmower and that uses 50% of the energy that the normal one does, you got to come to Nexus, right? We have the apparatus to support that endeavor.
And I follow your point exactly, which is not that we don't need landscaping businesses. All forms of entrepreneurship have their place, but the focus of Nexus Louisiana and this goal is filling this niche to widen that, because I think this is something that I think there ain't an ecosystem, region, state around the country that isn't having this conversation. How do we both have inclusive entrepreneurship? Come one, come all. We want you to have your shot to do this, and we want you to know the programs and resources available. How do we both have the widest net and reflect that the multiplier effects, the flywheel effects, everything we know often starts with breakthrough innovation, ends up being often inspired by sciences and technology. They do have downstream effects. That next hardware store happens where there is first breakthrough innovation, so people can go want to patronize that hardware store. These are two complementary, related, but distinct strategies. All entrepreneurship has value. We focus on the high growth stuff for the biggest opportunity. And so what you're kind of getting at is, well, you got to serve both, but you got to make sure you have this one solved. And we at Nexus Louisiana, we're focused on that high growth side. That's where we see this gap in Louisiana. Is that a fair assessment?
It is a fair assessment. And I'll extend that analogy a bit further, right? A lot of states are talking about their various economic development initiatives, right? Which we define as an agency that is state funded to use tax incentives to bring outside businesses into a state or a region so that new jobs can be created, right? And so economic development. The most famous example in our sort of recent history was Amazon's HQ2, Northern Virginia. We remember the massive frenzy of RFPs and mayors and governors were doing all these marketing campaigns to try to lure Amazon in. Northern Virginia wound up winning. And that was a classic textbook economic development example, because Amazon would be adding, don't quote me on the numbers, but thousands of jobs and millions or hundreds of millions of dollars and maybe billions of dollars in economic impact to Northern Virginia, right? Well, the most recent example here for us in Louisiana is Meta. Meta has been working on their Hyperion data center, largest data center in the country in Richland Parish, northeast Louisiana. That will represent close to a $30 billion economic impact to Louisiana. But that's not possible if 20 years ago there wasn't a group of college students in Cambridge, Massachusetts that were building a seemingly inconsequential app to help find classmates on campus, right? You can't have $30 billion in economic tax incentivized impact without 20 years ago, this very small seedling of a company starting. That through line is what we communicate when we're talking to policymakers. If you want that without having to lure them with tax incentives, you want to create that homegrown. This is the stuff. This is the work.
And I picture the ecosystem work is accepting one of the key points I think you had in your comment, which was it's of course felt trivial and inconsequential. And there's lots of fair criticisms of that particular business or another. And I think the lessons of the ecosystem approach is acknowledging a kind of humility to not knowing what one given inconsequential business today might surprise you by creating, predicting, shaping an industry of tomorrow. And so I think of it, and what I hope that Technic's editorial purpose is like, we want people to get their shot. That I think increasingly becomes my focus of, I do not know. I have great humility of, I've covered technology and science for 20 years. I think I would not have gotten the bets right often. And so what you want, give smart people a chance to meet each other, spark ideas, and get their chance. And we don't know what's going to be that emerging opportunity. And so we want a place in the group to say, like, get the chance.
No, we don't know, and we don't purport to know. But there are some things that we do have good, I think, intuition on, right? And number one is around the people and the types of people, and then also is about we are in Louisiana. This geography has some specific advantages, problems, opportunities for innovation, right? We're not California. We're not New York. We're losing a football field's worth of coastline every hour here in Louisiana.
Wow.
We have some massive challenges that if you solve them here, you can solve problems around the world. And so I think when we're talking about innovation and we're talking about startups in our ecosystem, the technologies that we're investing in should be solving the problems that we have here in the state. I think that's easier to justify that investment. And so there's 7 or 8 industries that Louisiana can punch above her weight in, both in terms of investment dollars, industry leaders to either become customers or acquire these startups, and also talent and expertise in these industries, which are the people who are going to be the ones to bring the innovations to that industry. And so we have all these things in spades. And yeah.
So let's go a bit more to the specifics of this goal. Over a decade, 1,000 net new, as you kind of alluded to, some number will be created regardless. So talk to me a bit about your definitions of what will count as high growth. What are some of the tools and programs and resources that you are either shepherding yourself or counting as driving or hoping to drive more of these companies?
I think the biggest sort of metric in the definition is investability by means of venture capital or a variety of other non-dilutive sources, such as federal grants from the NSF, right? And so we're not creating our own definitions for these. We're using and relying on pre-existing definitions from both, again, the venture capital community, but also state and federal agencies that are also funding these types of technologies. And so candidates for those opportunities is the easiest way to signal what we're talking about. But for folks who aren't familiar with either of those sets of criteria, we talk about, startups that have are good candidates for up to $3 million in investment, up to 3 co-founders on a team, or you've been working on this idea for up to 3 years. Those set of parameters are the types of startups that we incubate. Once you've passed those, we're passing you on to other partners in the ecosystem. But we start off from the idea stage up to 3 to 4 co-founders, 3 to 4 years in development, or $3 to $4 million raised in capital. And our programs are to identify people, teams, with as early as an idea, and coach them through that process. And so each year we have one of the things I would say it's a flagship competition every quarter is called Dev Days. And this is a college and university focused competition where we get industry prompts from a variety of these key sectors and industries, whether it's healthcare or the energy sector, construction technology, education technology, agriculture and ag tech as well. And we work with these industry leaders to define prompts for our community. And the prompt is essentially a business challenge that they are seeking new technologies to help solve. And we take these prompts and we share them with a statewide network of computer science majors, engineering majors, business students. And every 12 weeks, we run a new competition where we surface new prototypes for solving a very specific challenge. And through going through that program, you're now eligible for our further programs around funding, incubation. We also operate a physical campus that's 40,000 square feet, where you have a couple dozen tech startups at any given time building. But you have to go through it's easier, let me say, if you go through our programs to qualify for our incubator, which is a longer term engagement with founders and startups. And then finally, we have a venture capital entity to become the first check in these startups once they are investor ready. And so sort of a full life cycle approach, starting from idea stage to, again, those 3 to 4 graduation milestones that I mentioned.
I'm gonna lose you in a sec. So to clarify, you are intentional in saying you want these to be net new. It's an ambitious number. Where do you think? What's your theory of where these companies will come from? By which I mean, more likely that it's someone who maybe would have never taken the entrepreneurial path at all without this push, or would have taken the entrepreneurial path but may have gone less high growth, and this will nudge them in that direction, or bring someone from out of state altogether. Like, where do you think the source is of the people who will power these 1,000 new high growth startups?
So we tend to have a bias towards not self-styled entrepreneurs who are just perpetual pitch competition extraordinaires, but people who have deep expertise in a particular problem area, I can't teach you that subject matter expertise, but I can teach you how to build a startup.
Mm.
And so our bias is towards people who already have these intangible, deep levels of understanding on how something works that can be fixed. Because our job literally is to convert you into an entrepreneur. It's not, I don't view our job as taking someone who's already identifying themselves into an entrepreneur, and now I have to teach you about some industry. Because we're not experts. My team and our staff and our EIRs, we're not experts in every industry. You're the industry expert.
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to take you, teach you about fundraising, teach you about customer development, teach you about, rapid prototyping and customer discovery and all of these things that you may not have learned in your 10,000 hours of developing your expertise. So that's our theory of change. We have these people all across our state, again, in all these sectors. I look at our goal is to de-risk the entrepreneurial opportunity, the startup opportunity for them, because it's a very risky proposition. And I look at our nonprofit status. I look at our partnerships across, government and higher ed, to de-risk the startup opportunity. And I think if we can do that well through better policies, better incentives, better programs, I think we'll have smarter people, more experienced people taking a risk on building a startup.
I got to go, but on the way out, Tony, why do you do this? Why do you care? Why do you care about this entrepreneurship work?
I think Louisiana once had an extremely pivotal role in the global economy. It was the Louisiana Purchase, not any other state that we all learn about in school. And I think that it's in our DNA to reassume a position of global import. And I believe technology will be the way that happens in this next generation.
Tony Zanders, CEO of Nexus Louisiana, telling me a bit about his team's goal to grow 1,000 high growth startups net new over the next decade in Louisiana, and others can learn that lesson. Tony, I got more to ask you, but no time, so we'll have to do it another time. Tony, thanks for your time.
Enjoy the day.
Same to you. See you next time. Bye, everybody.